Ladies and gentlemen, the week 5 values video, each position. Fellas, we're going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. It's simple. It's easy. We're going to help you win some money in DFS this week. And this is one of the videos, along with the rest that we do during the week, to prepare you, to put tools in your toolbox. Or if you're hardcore, if you're a crazy son of a bitch, to put the guns in the holsters. You're going to war in the DFS contest with all the other people. Hopefully it's small field contests, because if you're playing in the Millie Maker, if you're playing in these big field contests, you might as well just spend that money on your kids, your significant other, or hey, why not yourself, then burning that shit in a Millie Maker. Stay in the small field single entry 3 max. That's how you win. But other people won't tell you that because they don't give a shit about you. But we value you just like we value these top value picks from each position. How about that? How about that for a segue? All I ask is 2 things from you. All I ask. I got a whole new shirts wardrobe. We picked up 6 more. You're going to see some beautiful shirts on these shows. Trust me. All I ask from you because of that, hey, hit the subscribe button. And if you're really feeling generous, the like button as well. Let's transition now into the quarterbacks. These are my top, as you see on the screen, my top value quarterbacks on the week. There he is. There's my man, Daniel Jones. Yes, the Daniel Jones whose worst performance this year is 16.5 fantasy points. And he, outside of that game, 22 or more fantasy points in every game. He's averaging, as it stands right now, 25 fantasy points per game. And I have him in this divisional matchup where it's a nice total, a 51.5 total. They are 7-point underdogs, but they have themselves a solid total of 23 points. Right? This is by Vegas. So you're going to have to throw. This means Daniel Jones might have to throw like he did last week for the first time this year, 40 times in a game. And that feels very nice, especially when you factor in that he's basically got a floor of like 3 to 4 fantasy points on the ground with his legs, becoming one of the best mobile quarterbacks out of nowhere right now in the NFL. But this is a good spot. And yeah, Trevion Diggs is great. And yeah, Micah Parsons looks like a rookie sensation for Dallas. And their defense has improved is what everybody is saying. But I'm not buying this as a top-tier, top-3 defense. I think Diggs is a fantastic cornerback, young cornerback, and he looked that way for parts of last year, so we'll see if this holds up. He's starting the year off hot this year. But I'm just not scared of it, and neither is Vegas giving a 23 implied total to Daniel Jones, and they're actually utilizing their weapons nicely. They didn't even have Sterling Shepard and Slayton last week, and Jones had his best game of the year. Yes, it went to overtime with 31 fantasy points. Why was that? Well, they got Evan Ingram back, a couple of third-down conversions. They got Saquon Barkley back for easy fantasy points for Daniel Jones, chucking a 54-yard touchdown his way. There you go. Do nothing for yourself and get 6 fantasy points. So Daniel Jones looks like a very solid play this week, and he even looks like a good play in the presenting sponsor SuperDraft. He is my top value quarterback. After that is Derek Carr, who just laid a stinker on Monday Night Football the last time that we saw him. And yeah, he ends up finding the end zone a couple times, but for the most part, a stinker. 20.4 fantasy points is what I have Derek Carr projected for here. And maybe that sounds like a lot to you, but with a 25.5 team implied total as a 5.5 point favorite, he has scored 25 or more fantasy points in 3 out of his first 4 games. The only time he didn't was the most recent game where everybody saw that, which likely lowers his ownership, and he has a solid matchup against Chicago. The biggest concern is what this offensive line of Vegas looks like versus the defensive front of Chicago. That is not going to look pretty this week, but we will take Derek Carr and all the pass attempts that we're getting right now out of him. We're getting 42.5 pass attempts per game. Even after throwing for just 200 yards on Monday Night Football, he still leads the NFL in passing with 349 passing yards per game, 349.8 to be exact. He's the number 2 value. And the number 3 value is a man that I'm going to be trying to play in a lot of GPPs this week because his price point might make people run away from him with one of the highest totals on the entire week. And that is the most expensive player on the slate. So this is how you know he's a really good fucking play. When he's the most expensive player on the slate and he's still a top 3 value for me, grading out as my highest projected quarterback at 26.5 points with the top 2, top 3 team total of 28 team implied points against San Francisco on the opposite side. Now I do like the under in this game. So that's my concern. Like I'm liking the under. I see how San Francisco runs the ball a ton with the number 1 run blocking advantage this week, with a team that might get Elijah Mitchell and might have a mobile quarterback in Trey Lance back there more than usual, if not starting, depending on Jimmy G's status. So I can see how some possessions could get stolen away from Arizona, which does concern me a little bit in this one, but even then, Kyler Murray still looks good. There's no reason why if Kyler Murray loses 1 possession in this game that he still can't go out there and ball the fuck out for 26 to 30 fantasy points. I mean, the guy right now, not only is he averaging on the ground 28 rushing yards per game, a couple of rushing scores, he's quietly averaging 318 passing yards per game. He's doing everything right now. A 76% completion percentage, 9.5 yards per attempt. Do you hear these numbers that I'm saying right now? He is balling out. His offensive line is giving him protection, a borderline 7% touchdown rate. Everything looks good for Kyler Murray. You already know that, but I'm just trying to add some fuel to your fire to jump on board for him. And now as we slide into running backs, let's build a super draft lineup here, and let's just, as we go, build it. So we just talked about quarterbacks. So let's put a quarterback in there. Now, if you're not familiar with SuperDraft, they have $50,000 to first contest every week, $250,000 contest. and it is the best, not even close, the best place to put your money. If you're going to put your money in a DFS contest, your first $20 should go into this contest because this contest does not fill. I will almost guarantee you that this contest will fill at around 70%. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you enter a lineup, you beat 30% of the field because it doesn't fill. Because I'm like the top promoter of SuperDraft in the entire fucking world right now. That's not even a joke. Whereas Draftkings and FanDuel are spending billions of dollars in their marketing budget, SuperDraft is partnering with me. Fucking Sal Vetri. So take advantage of that by actually being able to see this when nobody else is. There's $50,000 to first, and you will beat 30% of the field, a third to a quarter of the field, just by entering a lineup. That does not happen anywhere in DraftKings and FanDuel because those contests fill 100%. So let's start to build a lineup. Daniel Jones, who we just talked about, is one of the best SuperDraft plays this week. But for me, it's either Daniel Jones or my number 4 value play, who you did not get to see this week at quarterback, and that is Taylor Heineke. So we can play Daniel Jones or Heineke. They both look good, but Heineke gives us a higher multiplier at 1.6x. He has a tougher matchup this week, sure, against New Orleans. But let's go with here. You know what? Actually, fuck it. You know, we just talked about Daniel Jones as the top value on DraftKings, that is. Let's just go Daniel Jones here. We like the matchup. We like the mobility out of both these quarterbacks. We like the matchup a little bit more for Daniel Jones. So we'll go through and we'll build it for each position as we go. If you want $20 to play with for free on the best chance to win $50,000, it's this simple. Go to superdraft.io, click sign up, type in the code SAL. That's simple. Takes you 30 seconds. You can do it right now, and you'll get $20 for free as you start to play. And now our top value running backs on the week, and boy, oh boy, I love these value running backs this week. Like, these value running backs allow you to pay up for the Kyler Murrays very easily. For some reason, Leonard Fournette's price point still does not increase. He's still $5,200. I think he was $5K last week, and he was on the showdown slate, so, you know, he's looking at the whole main slate. But on the showdown slate, only $7,600. He is the dude in this backfield. Leonard Fournette is coming off of a week where he touched the ball basically every fucking time, and Ronald Jones, although he scored a touchdown, was not doing much there. You have Leonard Fournette last week seeing 20 carries on the ground, seeing 25 overall opportunities, 23 touches, going off for over 130 combined yards. He has just not found the end zone this year, and once he does, he's going to ball the fuck out. He's on the number 1 offense as a 10-point favorite against Miami, which has been a strong run blocking matchup now for about 3 to 4 years for teams. And it's no different this week as Tampa Bay has a positive 24% run blocking advantage. Again, a 10-point favorite with like a 30 implied team total. This is the dream spot for running backs and dream spot for rushing touchdowns. Give me Leonard Fournette right now as our number 1 play, our number 1 value play at the running back position. Number 2 is Damian Williams. He's going to be filling in for the next month or so as long as he stays healthy, 5 weeks for David Montgomery. And Damian Williams is a solid running back. He's 29 and a half years old, so he's not yet to 30, that 30-plus-year-old running back that's like, ooh, they got a lot of wear on their tires. He sat out an entire season. He never really was a workhorse until he was like number 27 or 28 years old. So this is a fine spot. I think he has somewhat fresh legs. He has some elusiveness. He has an ability to catch the ball, and he's going to find himself now in a workhorse role. The only guy back there is the rookie Khalil Herbert, who I do think maybe slowly factors in more, but not right away in this first game. And now we talked about Derek Carr. This is the opposite side of that game where it's still going to be a positive 20% run blocking advantage for the Bears in this one. And if anything, I just like the ability for a couple more catches. For a 4 or 5 reception game, for getting you 6 to 8 fantasy points just from the receiving game alone, not even counting touchdowns or rushing production, as they come into this one as about a 6-point underdog. Not the greatest team total at all by any means. Only a 20 implied team total, but we're trying to get there through the passing game. And it's also the fact, the reason why he's jumping up his value so much is he's kind of already priced for his role, but not completely. Like, this should maybe be like a $6,400 running back, so you're getting a little bit of value on the price tag. Now, the third running back that we like here is James Robinson. And I almost have to like nerf James Robinson. We'll see what happens with Carlos Hyde's status. He was ended up being, at first they said a healthy scratch, but then it was ruled that it wasn't a healthy scratch. But you're getting Robinson, who's averaging close to 5 yards per carry, who's seeing himself getting about 4.5 targets per game, over 16 opportunities per game. And he comes into this one with a solid matchup against Tennessee, but they're 4-point underdogs. But I'll take that. Let my man run more routes. Let James Robinson catch 5 balls, because we already know, even if they're just 4-point underdogs, which means the game's close, he's going to run the ball 14 to 15 times. So let them trail a little bit in the game so we can get some more routes run out of him. And at just $6,000, you're getting a workhorse running back. We're getting a lot of cheap running backs this week. If Joe Mixon plays, he'll be up here on this list. DeAndre Swift is still $6,100 after laying a stinker last week. We're getting a ton of cheap value running backs. We have a lot like Joe Mixon's and some other names right there as well. So although there's some studs that look good, Derrick Henry against Jacksonville always dominates them. You're getting Dalvin Cook against Detroit. Can he get his touches back up? Is he fully healthy? You're getting Saquon and Zeke. Saquon and Zeke finally getting some respect, getting put into that $7,000 price range, but still workhorse running backs. There's a lot up there. but you can just go down a little bit and find some really damn good values at 6K or below. Again, all three of these values running backs I'm talking about are $6,000 or below. And I have Robinson for 17.4 points. I have Robinson projecting out right now for a running back that should be around the $6,800 to $6,900 price point, right around that Najee Harris price point. And he'll find himself with a positive 16% run blocking advantage as not a crazy underdog in this one. So we do indeed like James Robinson. Now, how does that translate over to SuperDraft for us in terms of trying to build in two running backs and maybe even a flex for this one? Let's see where my SuperDraft projections for running backs come in. James Robinson will project out as my number 2 SuperDraft running back as of right now. So we just talked about him at length. Let's add James Robinson. So you get Daniel Jones and James Robinson. And then to add another running back, to add a second running back here if we're trying to build out this lineup, Najee Harris looks good. You have high multipliers on Leonard Fournette and Damian Williams, guys that we just talked about. So it's between probably some of those. Zeke and Saquon also look good. We'll probably go between Damian Williams, Leonard Fournette, and Najee Harris here. I do think Fournette will be lower owned, and he has a higher multiplier. We just talked about him, so let's add those guys to the card, and we'll continue to go through this. We'll add a couple of 1 or 2 wide receivers. We'll see what the tight ends look like. We'll leave the rest up to you. But again, use that code SAL for a free $20. Your best chance at winning any money this week. 50 grand in that contest. They have other contests for 10 grand, 5 grand at first. Is going to be on superdraft.io. Use the code SAL, S-A-L, simple SAL, for a free $20. So let's slide on a late night now to the wide receiver position, and this is just very easy for me. Curtis Samuel. I put a tweet out earlier this week, and we'll put it on the screen. Curtis Samuel was $3,000 last week. There were some concerns that he might be limited, and unfortunately for me, since I played him, he was limited. He only played 37% of the snaps, but he saw a 31% target rate, right? He only ran 13 routes because he was limited, and he saw 4 targets on those. So now, if you see that double, and he plays 74% of the snaps, and you start to see these 7 to 8 target games because he's actually a talented player, he's going to smash. He's going to dominate. And what is he projected at this week? $3,000 again. He is the number 1 overall play in the slate, assuming that he's not going to get a setback this week. He's my top value play on the entire slate. 9.6 fantasy point projection might be low for him. Like, you should not be shocked to see Curtis Samuel catch 7 balls for 60 yards this week. Not shocked by any means. I mean, he's a very talented fucking player. This is a $5,000, $5,500, $5,600 player, if not more, in about 3 to 4 weeks that we're going to get $2,000 or $3,000 because there's some uncertainty in the price tag. So this is not going to be a super draft play because he's not projecting out for a lot of fantasy points. He's just dirt cheap on Draftkings, so we'll take him there. He's my number 1 overall value play in the entire week. Shouldn't really shock anybody. Number 2 is going to be Antonio Brown. And Antonio Brown might have these seesaw weeks. And Antonio Brown could have smashed last week. Tom Brady, basically the rain got in him on the deep ball where he could have adjusted. Tom Brady on 2 out routes, back-to-back plays, throws the ball. It's just a little bit out wide in the rain. But he gets double-digit targets. He led this team in targets last week now. This has basically been 2 out of the 3 weeks where he's played that he's been that dude for Tom Brady. So I'm going to take that. And in a game where they have like a 30 implied team total, he's projecting out for just 15.2 points. This isn't an elite projection out of Antonio Brown, but it's a solid projection because of the fact that he's just mispriced. I mean, we're getting Antonio Brown and his teammate Leonard Fournette from this team. It's so easy to stack up Tampa Bay every single week, either as a run back or just get pieces of it in a skinny stack because they're both 5,200. Maybe the wide receiver one and definitely the running back one on the top 3 passing offense in the NFL right now, if not top 1, has 2 $5,200 players. 2 as a top maybe wide receiver and running back. It's crazy how easy it is to stack up this team. Brown is now averaging 7 targets per game through his 3 games. Very solid. And you're also getting Antonio Brown with a 15.6 air yards per target, meaning that he just has so much upside. That's a nice number. It's not like 18 to where it's just do or die on all of his passes like an MVS or a Brian Edwards, but it's nice. It's not 10 where it's just these short routes that don't have upside. It's 14.6, meaning that they're highly convertible, so you get receptions and you get the points, but also have upside on top of them. And the third wide receiver right now stands out as a value. It's just a man who continues to fucking see 10, 12, 13 targets every single week, and that's Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is getting these short targets, which are easy to convert on. Eventually, he'll score a touchdown, but he's the clear wide receiver 1. He has 20 more targets than anybody else in the Patriots. Mac Jones loves this guy. Bill Belichick loves this guy. They're scheming everything for him. And every single week in DFS, Jacoby Myers, whether it's a showdown slate where he's cheap at 8,400, under-owned, leverage play. Whether it's every single main slate, under-owned, leverage play. He is one of the target leaders in the NFL, averaging 10.3 targets per game. The other players in his price range, right? The other players in Jacoby Myers' price range, he's $5,600 at wide receiver. He is right now averaging, if I look at the key stats database, check it out on Patreon. We have projections, rankings, ownership, an optimizer, a Discord, leverage, all this type of stuff you can check out all down below. Matchup notes for every single player that will be starting on Patreon. Check it out for an industry low price. Down below, get up in there, fill up your arsenal right now and go to war. Link down below on Patreon. But the other guys around him in the price tag, I mean, you're getting guys all in that $5,500 to $5,400 range. Nobody is above 8 targets per game. You're getting Devontae Parker at at 8 targets per game. Everybody else is around 6 to 7. Even the guys slightly more expensive than him, they're all around 6 to 7. It's not until you get to $6,100 Brandon Cooks, who's $500 more than Jacoby Myers, that you see somebody even come close to his 10.3 targets per game, and Cooks is still below that at 9.8. Chase Claypool's at 9.7 in games that he's played. You have to get all the way up to $6,500 to find a player who has more targets per game and more opportunities per game than Jacoby Myers. And that's underpriced, very cheap, close to making this list. Keenan Allen seeing 11 targets per game, who's $900 more. Myers right now, I think, should be a $6,000 to $6,200 wide receiver. You're getting at a fantastic price point of just right now. He's also a very good SuperDraft play. We'll talk about that in a second. But right now in DraftKings of just $5,600. And we just talked about the motherfucker himself for so long. Jacoby Myers is my top wide receiver value or just projection right now on SuperDraft, and he has a crazy multiplier of 1.6x. We'll cover one more wide receiver here, and we'll let you build the final wide receiver in the flex play on your own, and then we'll cover tight end. So the other wide receivers that look good, Mike Williams still has a fantastic multiplier of 1.55x. Antonio Brown, we just talked about, has a 1.5x multiplier. But let's go right back to Mike Williams. He just had a stinker week. I think he looks really good in this matchup at home with a nice total against Cleveland. And he has a high multiplier. I mean, his multiplier right now should probably be like 1.4x, 1.3, and it's at 1.55x. So we'll take this. This is the lineup so far: Fournette, Myers, Jacoby Myers, James Robinson, Daniel Jones. This might not look like a good lineup to you for DraftKings. It shouldn't. It's a totally different website in SuperDraft. It's all about value ratings on the multipliers. It does not matter. There is no salary cap. Again, use the code SAL for a free $20 Rooskies, your best chance to win the dollar Rooskies. So finishing it up now with the tight end position, you can see them on the screen. Tight ends normally just going to be the good players because it's such a stark difference between how many fantasy points the top 3-4 elite guys can score compared to everybody else. But there is a top value play on here who did pay off for a lot of us with 70 yards and a touchdown, continues to run so many routes and play a lot of snaps, in Jared Cook. Everywhere Jared Cook goes, he's a solid tight end, but for some reason he can never stick there. They never give him a higher contract. But Cook is now running 30 routes per game. He's seeing 5.8 targets per game for a tight end. That's very good. And his average air yards per target is 16.4. Now, that's not where the mega elites like Darren Waller and George Kittle and even Mike Gesicki, who's running as basically a wide receiver right now, are, but he's the next highest on this slate after that. So Jared Cook is seeing volume downfield and a pass-first offense and a solid spot this week and getting the targets of 6 right now per game. He also quietly has 4 red zone targets, which is a 15.4% red zone target share for his team. So I like Jared Cook. He looks solid, more so on DraftKings than SuperDraft. George Kittle is on this list because he's cheap. He's coming off of an 11-target game, but only 4 receptions on that, so he's not getting much conversions right now, but still seeing 7.2 targets per game. It's solid if you want to get to George Kittle. A 21.3% air yard market share is tied for number 2 on this slate with Mike Gesicki, believe it or not. Kittle looks good. He looks solid on SuperDraft, but it's simple. You know what George Kittle is. He's going to get the volume. Can they finally convert on that volume for him? And will he eventually find himself in the red zone? Because he has yet to see, a man who just never scores touchdowns for whatever reason, has yet to see a single red zone target through 4 weeks this year. Now, he played 1 week banged up, but the single red zone target is not seen. And the number 3 value, who is the number 1 projected player for me, is none other than Darren Waller. I mean, you're getting 10 targets per game. You're getting a nice team total of 25.5. You're getting the NFL high 27.5% share of his team's air yards. You're getting 6 red zone targets, which leads right now all the tight ends on this slate. Everything's good for Darren Waller. You know that. He looks good on SuperDraft. He looks good on DraftKings. He only has a 1x multiplier in SuperDraft, though, by the way. So that 1x multiplier can become a little bit sketchy, but he obviously has the highest ceiling of all these tight ends. I think your best SuperDraft plays, if you want to just go to Darren Waller and Kittle, I think they'll be highly owned. You can go there. But I think after that, it would be either Jared Cook or guys who have these really high multipliers, like a Max Williams, who has a 1.2x multiplier. So you can go to a Max Williams to get a little bit different. It is kind of risky, but you can go to Max Williams. You can go to Jared Cook, who I think is probably maybe the best SuperDraft play, factoring in his multiplier. But that's where we're at. I'll leave it up to you to find your other wide receiver in flex. You can use my projections on Patreon, patreon.com down below, /Sal_Vetri_. There's a link down below, makes it much easier. You can check that out. Use the code SAL to get that free $20 over on SuperDraft. But there you go, the values per position. I appreciate all you beautiful people for tuning in, and hit the subscribe button right now. More content, the final thoughts, the That One Do, the Sunday Showdown, the Sunday live stream, the Thursday night live stream, all this content, all these schmacks, the Thursday Showdown, a bunch of content coming out for all of you people. So I appreciate if you just want to hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for tuning in. You all rock. The value is here, baby. There it is for every single position. I'll see you in the next one.